It is a story about rivalry and friendship, a story of trust and betrayal, and it will be the most tragic story in all of One Piece. Buggy kills Shanks. Captain Buggy the Clown, Yonko, fits two character tropes, the one of the sad clown and the one of a classic pirate. And by doing so, he even reverses the concept of a tragic hero. From the start, Buggy and Shanks are destined to fight each other. Shanks is Buggy's rival, not Luffy's. Since a while now I had a thought that I could not get out of my head. What if Buggy actually kills Shanks? I think I found several indicators that point out why BKS could actually happen in the future. But at first, let's take a look back to the beginnings. Buggy and Shanks were crewmates of Goldie Roger. Both of them were constantly fighting and arguing with each other about all kind of things. For example, where it's colder, North or South Pole. Despite that, they watched each other's back, and even Kosuke Oden could do nothing but wonder if they both were friends or mortal enemies. We also learned that Shanks even missed out on the One Piece just so he could take care for Buggy when he became sick. And herein lies the perfect material for a great piece of literature. A drama between former friends. Of all the pirates we've seen so far in One Piece, Buggy and Blackbeard are closest to the classic pirate trope. Grog drinking, marauding, loud partying, murderous sea devils who give no single shit about rules or laws. They know no sympathy for strangers and do whatever they like. Even though he has a soft side sometimes, we cannot deny that Buggy is a cruel person who kills helpless villagers and demolishes their buildings. He does not even hesitate to execute his own crewmates. He is about to obliterate a whole village with his weapon of mass destruction, the Buggy Ball. Just as Uranus, by the way. Check here for more. When Luffy arrives in the town. In chapter 11, Buggy steps Zoro in the back and Luffy calls him out for fighting dirty. We hear something similar about Whitebeard later, who does not have a single wound from a covered attack on his back. Well, sucks for you, Zoro. You will not be able to enter the Whitebeard Club. Oh wait, let me see that again. Oh, okay, it's not really the back, it's the side. Alright, we let this slide. Anyway, Buggy could not care less about something like this, as he is a real pirate, and pirates fight dirty. In chapter 15, we hear him proclaim that he will soon rule the Grand Line, and all the treasure will be his. All the treasures. He will have them all. Well, that's a bold statement. In chapter 17 we see the same thing again. While Kabachi is fighting Zoro, Buggy is trying to hold him. That man knows his dirty tricks. Luffy stops him from doing so and announces that he wants to be the king of the pirates. Buggy gets furious after hearing this and tells Luffy that in fact, he will be the one who will claim the world's treasure One Piece. Right after that, he mentions that Luffy and his straw hat remind him of that insolent dog with the red hair. They proceed fighting, and in chapter 18 something happens that we want to keep in mind for later. But what also happens is that Buggy puts a nick into the straw hat, followed by straight up stabbing it with 3 knives. Buggy says that he and Shanks are mortal enemies. They have a history and Buggy has reasons to hate Shanks, as we find out one chapter later. In chapter 19 we see another prime example of use of Haki in the earliest series. Buggy tries to come apart, but Luffy strikes him screaming, "Don't come apart!" You can find more on the topic in this video here. Anyway, Buggy begins telling the story of how Shanks stole the great treasure from him, and we enter a flashback. In the flashback, a ship is nearing and Shanks and Buggy get ready to enter. But before that, Buggy says that Shanks and all pirates on the ship are too soft. None of them has proper appreciation for booty. You lost sight of what being a pirate is all about. This is a very important moment in my opinion. We will come back to this later too. The two crews are fighting and we see our red-nosed fool finding a treasure map. He then hides it with the plan to find it later. The crew parties hard after winning the fight and our two rivals start talking about the future. Shanks wants to be a captain of his own ship, to see the world, and maybe some pirating along the way. As Buggy hears that, he starts laughing. He acknowledges Shanks' fighting power, but then goes on to call him too soft. If it wasn't for that, he would ask him to be on his crew. So again, we see Buggy calling Shanks too soft, but also that Buggy would invite Shanks to his crew if only he was more pirate-like. Shanks of course declines. He would never work for Buggy. Overall, they think differently, and being a pirate is all about going your own way. Buggy then laughs and asks Shanks how he would know what being a pirate is about. Attention now, another very important part for this theory. He then proclaims that if their paths ever cross again on the high seas, It will be a fight to the finish, and Shanks agrees. This is it, an agreement between men. If you wanna argue that they met at Marineford, then I will answer you that it is an island and not the high seas. Alright, this is the starting point. Two friends, rivals, since young age, agree upon a deadly fight in the future. Don't you think that is a bit over the top? This clearly shows that both are extremists. But maybe that is what it takes to succeed on a grand line. We come back to this later too. The dots will connect. By the way, for anyone still believing that Roger had the devil fruit even after Kaido stating that he didn't. In the same chapter we see how the crew reacts to Buggy seemingly eating the devil fruit and being confused about the fact that nothing really happens. Most of them come to the conclusion that maybe those tales about the devil fruits were lies. Why would you say something like that if your captain had a devil fruit, right? Anyway, Buggy ate the fake fruit so he can sell off the real one for a great amount of money. Who would give up his ability to swim anyway, right? Only a fool, as he states himself. With his plan coming to fruition, he's dreaming all by himself, being amazed about the riches he has gained. He plans to put together the crudest pirate crew ever and steal more treasure. Shanks pops up behind him to tell him something. Buggy hides the devil fruit in his mouth. After Shanks wonders about Buggy's face, he walks off and Buggy relaxes, just to swallow the whole thing when his rival pops up again, because he remembered that he wanted to inform Buggy about something the captain said. Panic. Buggy starts panicking and screams at Shanks. In the same moment his map flies off the ship, and as a reflex, he jumps after it to not lose his chance on the big treasure. Unable to swim, Buggy was drowning. And from then on, he kept a grudge against Shanks for ruining his plans, even though he got saved by the same man. What we can tell so far is that Buggy loves treasure. He loves it so much that he forgets everything around him when his future wealth is in danger. Nami tries to sneak away with the treasure of the village and Buggy instantly goes after her, leaving Luffy behind. This spells the end for him in this fight, as Luffy defeats him shortly after. After this we can follow Buggy's adventures through a few cover stories, and the next time we see him is in chapter 98. He recovered his crew and formed an alliance with Alvida. There on the platform, where his beloved Captain Roger has been executed, stands Monkey D. Luffy, the upstart pirate that reminds him of Shanks so much and that ruined his plan in the East Blue. One chapter later we can find Buggy up there together with Luffy as he is about to execute him, a future Yonko. If you think about it, all Yonko but Shanks got replaced later. Blackbeard kills Whitebeard, Luffy defeats Kaido, Big Mom got taken down by Law and Kid, and Buggy? He failed to take Luffy down here in Loketown, so what Yonko will he take down? It will be Shanks. In chapter 100, Buggy gets caught by Smoker, but luck is on his side once more, because it is not only Luffy who escapes Smoker's grasp thanks to Dragon, it is also Buggy. Don't you think that is funny? How is Lady Luck smiling upon Buggy so much from this day on? Was it luck though? Is it possible that Dragon intended to not only free Luffy but Buggy as well? However, freed from his shackles, Buggy decides to go for the Grand Light once again, and so does Smoker. In chapter 103, the chapter where we get introduced to Vivi, we have a very interesting cover art. We see Luffy, who is riding a miniature version of Laboon, and Smoker and Buggy in the background. Oda loves hiding things. As we see, Vivi is here with Mr. 9, who looks like a prince, which is funny, because actually, she is the princess. So why do we see Buggy, Luffy and Smoker on this cover art then? I think it will have something to do with the end of the story. These three will play a very big part in the endgame. What exactly, I cannot tell yet. I will wait for more chapters, maybe things will become more clear then. It's a while until we see Buggy and his crew again. In chapter 233, they enter a cave on an island on the Grand Line, shaped like a skull. In the dark they are looking for Captain John's treasure. Buggy is certain that it has to be here. Suddenly, the light turns on and they encounter some miners. They are working up some sweat with them for a while until Buggy notices that he is a pirate and not a miner. Back on his ship, Mochi points out that it was the wrong island, but we do know now that Buggy was looking for another treasure. Treasure is extremely important for Buggy the Clown. Oda is not getting tired of letting us know that. Also, Buggy mentions that you should fatten him first before you eat him, regarding Mochi, who was talking about the rising bounty of the Straw Hat Pirates. And is there anyone fatter than Red Hat Shanks in the pirate world? After that, Ace appears on Buggy's ship, lured by the smell of food. They have a small chat and then proceed to party on. And after this, we see the 5 elders for the first time. Don't you think it's weird that we see Buggy right before the elders? Why did Oda include this scene right before something as important as the meeting of the warlords in Marijoas? It's Buggy the Clown, man. This character is purely for comedic purpose. His time is over, right? Well, we know better now, but still, keep in mind the fact that he was shown right at this time. Then, it becomes silent about Buggy the Clown until chapter 525, where we get to see Avida, who tells us that Buggy the Clown's luck has run out. So somewhere between the last time and now, Buggy got caught and imprisoned in Imperdown. His crew is desperate to save him. But as Avida explains the impossibility of this deed, they quickly forget about their undying love towards their captain. Notice how Buggy is tied to another major event again. In the same chapter, we hear Hannibal announcing that Buggy the Clown has escaped from his cell. And I wanna know how? Hannibal seems to be surprised about the fact that Buggy has devil fruit powers. Did they not check him for it? Seems like Avida was wrong, huh? His luck has not run out at all. Now, in Impel Down, we will see something that in my opinion is foreshadowing. Luffy teams up with Buggy to reach his goal, and so does Buggy. I think it is possible that in the future Luffy will team up with Buggy again in some way. And Buggy is not necessarily weak. Sure, he's not anywhere on Luffy's or another Yonkos level, but in 527 he lifts up a blue gory and throws him into the air. It's also the chapter where Buggy's Chop Chop powers get explained. And it's also the chapter where Buggy gets the treasure marker to Captain John's loot. Also, we see another side of Buggy here. A side that he despises so much on Shanks. A soft side. Because Luffy willingly hands over the marker in exchange for guidance, Buggy cannot handle the trust that Luffy puts on him. But it doesn't take him long to go back to his mean self as he thinks about ditching Luffy right after that. He stays true to his classic pirate side once more in chapter 533, when he throws away his escape plan just to get his hands on some grog in the kitchen. Real pirates like grog, right? What can he do? In chapter 541, future Yonko Buggy frees the prisoners of Impel Down and rallies them behind him. Captain Buggy, the luckiest man alive, is what the prisoners call him in chapter 544. Once more, we get to see what are the most important features of Buggy. He is a true pirate, he loves treasure, he is very, very lucky, and he is a clown. In chapter 546, Buggy escapes Impel Down together with Crocodile, Mr. One and Jinbei. He more or less already thinks he is safe as he leaves Impel Down behind him until he notices that they plan to take over a marine ship. All of this goes pretty well, no thanks to Buggy, and in chapter 548, they manage to help the other prisoners escape as well. And there we go, seeing people chanting Buggy's name, thanking him for freeing them. And to be honest, he actually did do that. Sure, he didn't help at all when fighting their way out, but it was Buggy's decision to free all the prisoners and cause a ruckus. Yes, he did all this for himself. He did it so his chances of survival and escape are bigger, but in the end, the result counts. And Buggy is pretty good at using opportunities. In the same chapter, Crocodile commands the prisoners to return fire, but Buggy acts like it was his idea and they follow. And again, in chapter 548, Buggy cries upon Bantham's sacrifice. He says, "You are so brave, I'm sorry for everything." He literally regrets his former actions, but only to get over it in a split seconds, and proposes to have a party in his honor in chapter 549. It is not like Buggy has no morals at all, it's just that his greed and own interests are way bigger. And it's the same chapter in which the Marines acknowledge Captain Buggy the Clown as a powerhouse. And it is here when he starts dreaming again about becoming one of the 4 emperors. And after that, King of the Pirates. All he has to do for that is to take Whitebeard's head. What an easy thing to do, right? And even though things do not go according to his plan, we do know that he manages to actually become a Yonko later. And again, it's not how you do it, only the result counts, right? Isn't that a very pirate way of doing things? He wants to rule the world. On to Marineford. In chapter 561, Luffy grabs Buggy mid-air to use him as a shield against Hawkeye's attack. After getting sliced several times, he turns to Mihawk and screams, "I'll get you for this! Take this special Muggy Ball, I'll blast you off the face of the earth!" That's right, at least back then he didn't give 2 single shits about Mihawk either. When Buggy is pissed, he goes all in, as usual. He first acts and then thinks. And it's the same Hawkeye who utters the following words. It's not powers or techniques. He possesses some quality that makes people want to help him. And in these waters, that is the most formidable power of all. Yes, he's thinking about Luffy here, but can we agree on the fact that the exact same thing applies for Buggy too? It goes on. In chapter 562, Buggy starts broadcasting to the world that he is a legendary pirate. Buggy is working hard on increasing his fame in the world, and it will pay out quite well for him. Furthermore, in chapter 567, Whitebeard says to Luffy, "You are nothing but a mess of spirit. All you can do is talk big. Pathetic young fool. I love idiots like you." Doesn't this apply to Buggy too? Can you see it? Over and over people make statements about Luffy, but all of these work for Buggy just as fine. By the way, did you know that white-faced clowns are the highest in clown hierarchy? When you see clowns performing in a circus, amongst all the clowns, there's often the white-faced one. This is always the leader of the crew. They cover the entire face down to the neck with white makeup, with other features painted on in red. This clown is mostly more serious than the others and wears fancy uniform-like clothing. Why am I telling you this? Well, look how Buggy's original design looked like. Also, have you ever heard of the sad clown paradox? It's the contradictory association between comedy and mental disorders, like depression or anxiety. This mostly shows for people who had a hard time in their early lives, and as a release for all these negative emotions and suppressed physical rage, they tend to have a very big verbal outlet. Now let's apply all this for Buggy. We do not know anything about his time before he was part of Roger's crew yet, but it was probably not a very good one. While on the Oro Jackson, he is surrounded by all these capable and strong men. Even his rival Shanks is better than him. All this must have been very frustrating, and as we can see, Buggy grew up to become a big-mouthed, good-for-nothing pirate, leading a local pirate gang and picking on people weaker than him. So indeed, he is the white-faced clown in a way, as he is the leader of his circus clown crew, but he is also a sad clown. And he kept being that for a while longer until chapter 1082. But we are not done yet. In chapter 576, Whitebeard tells Blackbeard, just as there are some who inherited Roger's will, someone will eventually do the same for Ace. You can sewer bloodlines, but their flames will never be extinguished. You notice something here? He says there are some who inherited Roger's will, not there is one. So it's possible that more than one person can inherit a will of someone else, so why not Buggy too? Buggy of course does not notice any of this because he has several other things to do than watching Whitebeard, and after Whitebeard died, we see him running away crying. But he does not cry because he mourns for Whitebeard. He does because he was too scared to even get close to him. Whitebeard was a monster. That is actually funny though, because there's a Yonko that most people fear equally, if not even more. Red-haired Shanks. But Buggy doesn't give two shits about Shanks. He's not scared of him at all. This fact is very important for the story. This and another thing, which is that Shanks always steps in for the weak. He is too kind, and in my opinion this will spell his doom. We can see exactly this behavior in 579. Shanks steps in to protect Kobe from Akainu. He has come to put an end to this war. He is then asking Buggy to bring the Straw Hat to Luffy in exchange for a treasure map. Shanks clearly knows which buttons to press with Buggy, because he instantly follows his request and throws ahead towards Law's crew, which reunites it with Luffy. But of course, Shanks lied. There is no map for Buggy, and naturally, Buggy farts in one of his rages, cursing at Shanks, calling him a liar. How dare he make him his errand boy? And he then says, "Don't forget, I still hold a grudge against you." Of course, Buggy's followers are instantly impressed by this. Look at his attitude towards one of the 4 emperors. There we go. Buggy clearly does not care if Shanks is an emperor or not. For him, it's an old acquaintance, which was responsible for destroying Buggy's dream. In chapter 593, Buggy proudly shows Captain Shot's treasure mark to Evita and his crew, and then goes on to say that the wind in this world doesn't blow to the east or the west. It blows for him. One chapter later, the Gorosei already talk about the fact that they have to pick the ones with the greatest influence for the Warlord's title. Obviously, they saw Buggy as such a person since he got named the Warlord. Later in the story, we witness how the great Buggy even becomes a Yonko, and that's because his fame and influence have skyrocketed. In chapter 1056, Cross Guild is formed and Buggy is now officially the Bombastic Clown. What a great title! In chapter 1082, we see Buggy who got another beating from Croc and Mihawk. His sewered head is hanging on a hook, and while the two consult each other about their next plans, Buggy snaps. "Wealth? You're saying we need wealth and power, right? I may be out of line here, and I don't know. You may do away with me for saying this, but how can you call yourself pirates with schemes like that? You're doing it all backwards!" Buggy knew he could not measure up with Shanks, so he let go of his real dream, but then Shanks changed his mind, for now at least. Buggy calls Shanks out. "You are not the next generation's king? I misjudged you, Shanks." Look at that! Finally, Buggy reveals that he actually thought highly of Shanks. He had mad respect for him despite all his slander, but the moment Shanks discloses that he's not going to follow into Roger's steps for now, Buggy loses it, because he wants to follow Roger's footsteps. All that hatred he had for Shanks about losing the treasure map, eating the devil fruit and so on. All that was probably long forgiven already. Until that moment. The moment that Shanks tells Buggy that he is not willing to follow the captain's example. The moment Shanks tells Buggy all this, all that stuff comes back to his mind. Everything. As well as the agreement about the fight to the death. You better watch your back next time we meet. Shanks asks Buggy to join his crew, but Buggy is not willing to work under a cupboard. There we have it. Red-haired Shanks, Yonko of the seas. Coward. In chapter 589, Luffy realizes that he was weak, and one chapter later, that he still has his crew. It's the people who are important to him, more than anything else. And in chapter 1082, Buggy realized that he is weak, but he wants to become the king of the pirates. He remembered his old dream from a time where he still had ambitions. All the regrets, all the disappointment, all the pain and humiliation, all of it released within a short moment to unfold his true potential. Buggy the Clown awakened his will. Luffy once stated that he would never go on an adventure that isn't fun. The one who is the most free is the Pirate King. And Buggy is just realizing the same thing. He already has all it needs to go for the One Piece. He is a Yonko. I say this right now. Buggy inherited Roger's will, just as Whitebeard said. When standing in front of Ace and Whitebeard's graves, Shanks thinks, you grow up and become a man by experience victory and defeat. By doing difficult things, shedding tears. It's alright to cry. Just overcome it. Buggy is finally realizing that all he has accomplished so far was pure luck. Sure, he jumped on board and sailed with the wind blowing for him, but overall, let's be honest, it was luck. But now, we are bearing witness of real character progression. Buggy the Clown, the man who was often smiled at and shoved to the sidelines, this man has finally realized what it takes to become the king of the pirates. And so, he will go and fight for the One Piece. There will be a moment when Shanks has to protect someone he cares for deeply, and that is when Buggy will strike. In chapter 597, we can see Mihawk's thoughts. Such a clumsy fool. When a man of your caliber abandons his pride, it is always for the sake of another. He is thinking about Zoro here, but clearly he's referring to Shanks as well. As such, there could be several scenarios. Okay, let's make one real quick. It's a big fight. Chaos everywhere. All the Yonkos clash, and amongst them, Buggy and Luffy. They teamed up to fight together. Maybe because Blackbeard poses such a big threat. But then, being the sneaky pirate that Buggy is, still having a grudge on him, he decides to backstab Luffy. Literally. And Shanks sees this in the future. I'm certain. Something could happen that would give him such an opening, as Luffy is such a trustworthy fool. We saw how he fell for Buggy several times in Impel Down. So why not here? And as Shanks foresees this with his haki, he rushes to help, because Luffy is the one on whom he made a bet for the future. But because Buggy is his old friend, Shanks is not able to strike him down. So in this short moment of doubt, while jumping in front of Luffy to guard him, unsure what to do, Buggy stabs Shanks instead of Luffy. That is just one scenario of all the possible ones that could happen. Remember when I told you there was something in chapter 18 that we want to look at later? As you can see, Buggy hurts Luffy by separating his arm in a moment when Luffy thought he had already guarded off the attack. It's a moment of safety for Luffy that turns out to be not safe at all. This ability of Buggy to split in all ways possible is truly dangerous once he learns how to use this better. We might see something similar when he fights Shanks. Or do you think it's a coincidence that right after that he damages the straw hat Luffy got from Shanks 2 times and even spits on it? Buggy will have his revenge on Shanks, but he will also regret it afterwards. This will probably be the saddest moment in the entire story. Oda is cooking up something so tragic that even writing this gave me the chills. Buggy will be the sad clown that killed his former friend and rival red-haired Shanks. Who do you think was it that Shanks spoke with the Gorosei about? Luffy? Blackbeard? I think it was Buggy. There's way more to this clown that we know yet. Thank you so much for watching. Please tell me what you think about all this in the comments. And if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. See you next time.